Hee haw, 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 hee
All right. Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Hey, loyal listeners, I am Graham.
And I am Ashkahn. And let's get down to business. I'm going to make that our tagline. Like, hey, I'm Graham and Ashkahn. Let's get down to business. It's going to be a thing from now on.
That sounds great. So our question for today is, aside from memberships and packages, is there any other way to reward frequent floaters? They aren't looking to buy on a consistent basis, but I'd like to keep them coming back.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to reward people.
Under the table bribes.
Yeah, just kind of rubbing their shoulders when they come in. Yeah, you know, we've tried some things in the past ourselves that weren't memberships or packages, but kind of incentives for people to float again.
Yep, and the first thing we tried was doing nothing. I guess just offering floating at a single price was the first thing we tried outside of that. Not really an incentive, I guess, more as just we're not providing any incentive, so you should still pay the price that we're asking. That did okay, but you'd have people coming in who just swear up and down that they were going to return, they didn't. So it's pretty obvious you need something to incentivize people beyond just their passion once they get out of the tank to take that step and come back.
Yeah.
So before we did any memberships, though, we had some other programs. For example, we did a float chain, where if people scheduled their next float when they got out of their float that they were coming in for right then they could get $10 off of the next float that they scheduled. And you could do that indefinitely. So theoretically, if you just always scheduled the following float when you're getting out of your current float, then you could save $10 off of every float that you were having.
We also did one if you were to bring a new person in with you who hadn't floated, you'd both get $10 off your float. And if you brought like two new people in, you'd get $20 off your float. They'd each get 10 off their float. So kind of a good way of getting people to not just come back themselves, but come back with somebody else, a new person.
Yep. And was that it for just straight discounts?
I feel like we had one more.
Well, we did
can't remember.
It was the internship program that we had up on the wall for a while there.
So, well, anyway, there's a lot of creative things you can do.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff you can come up with that are ways to give people cheaper floats for some sort of reason. But I don't know. In the end, well, we hit some problems with that stuff with just like things got complicated with like all these multiple different types of incentives.
Yeah, so let's back up and talk about each of those independently. And these are just two examples, like Ashkahn said, that you could do. But I'd say the primary problem actually with both of them was simply that people were coming in and not actually using them. And we'd have to remind people, and especially if the referral one, and kind of coming in with friends and stuff like that. I mean, if someone came in with two friends and didn't mention it, and we didn't kind of force them to take the discount, and then they later realized it, everyone was upset. It's like $40 they could have saved. And so then we're in this interesting position as a business where it's like, well, they were willing to pay full price, but they might get upset if we don't let them know that there is a potential discount. So it sort of feels like we're either leaving money on the table or being a little dishonest with people, which is an interesting thing to have to kind of weigh back and forth.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, these things, like, they're just a little bit more, I guess, like fragile than memberships and packages. Like there's something about a membership or a package where you're kind of just making that decision one time and then you're in this thing that just kind of the status quo becomes you staying in it, as opposed to these one-off incentives really rely on people kind of actively taking you up on it over and over and over again. And so in terms of just like the general stability, long-term stability, we've found that like memberships and packages and keeping that as what we really want to encourage people to do is been more useful for us than trying to come up with kind of creative one-off discounts.
I mean, even above that, we've just sort of moved towards memberships being the kind of ideal thing to move people towards. Even packages, we'll still offer them, but we kind of keep them secret menu.
We don't label. They're not on our website. They're not in the prices when you come into our shop. They're just like if someone specifically asks.
Yeah, and it kind of makes sense. Like you're with packages, you're incentivizing spending a lot of money with you all at once, which is great. It's always nice to have an influx of cash. But with memberships, you're rewarding staying on with you and loyalty and sticking around with your business and making this a part of your life and a habit. It's just so much more powerful if you can have someone who is a regular customer who's coming in month after month. And typically, even though it's not a giant purchase all at once, kind of tortoise in the hairstyle, those people who are with you for a long time end up giving more money to your business and ultimately, I think, better word of mouth because it being such a habit is so powerful for people's lives and the story they end up kind of cultivating around floating.
Yeah, and this, so this person's question was about people who don't want memberships packages, like aren't coming in really on a routine
Wait, we're answering
basis.
That's right. We're answering a question.
Yeah,
I thought it was just Graham and Ashkahn opinion.
Talking about
again.
memberships again, and you know what? I think one thing to think about is like you could structure your memberships in a way that allow for more casual people to be involved in it. Like one option is to do things where there's the rules that you can set for your memberships that I think take some of the pressure off of it seeming like a huge commitment, like allowing people to share their floats and allowing some sort of, different scales of what people are paying each month and what they get out of it. Like you can make an almost easier membership to have that doesn't feel like, boy, if I'm not floating every week, I'm totally getting kind of screwed on this deal, or I really need to be floating a lot for this to be the right decision for me. So like building and stuff like that into your membership structure to me almost is more ideal than trying to come up with something outside of memberships as a way for people to still come in.
It's true. I mean, even with our membership is $54 a month for a single float as compared to $77 for the cost of a regular 90-minute float with us. And I feel like even if people aren't in Portland for, months at a time, it means at most they've kind of accumulated 2, 3, maybe 4 floats over the course of the 3-4 months they're gone.
Which
and then when
roll
they're back
over,
in town,
they can give them away. It's
no
there's no expiration.
like expiration on them. Yeah.
We're really setting it up so that it doesn't feel like a burden.
So, I mean, yeah, that is totally an alternative. It can still be a membership. It's just when they're not using it, it doesn't really cause them any problems, which is a very nice alternative. Little shout out as well to a online company run by a float center owner who is one of the first people in the float industry who we met, which is Kane, down from Float Matrix, who runs Reward More, which is kind of just an entire alternative structure to memberships, which I guess is worth mentioning. Kind of like our float chain, but a little more broad, which is just if someone floats and then they float again within a set period of time, like a month, then the cost of that float goes down. And if they then float again within the period of another month, the cost goes down again. So it's kind of these stepping stones towards getting cheaper floats as long as you are making it a habit. And then if you don't float within a month, you kind of go back up to the rung above. So floating gets a little more expensive, but maybe not full price. You don't float 2 months in a row, and all of a sudden you're kind of back up to the regular full price float. So I kind of like that. It's like the everyone's a member sort of philosophy, right, and implemented in just
kind of that light kind of incentive for everybody coming in to come in more frequently.
Yeah, because the downside of memberships is everywhere knows that members are awesome, right? Like everywhere knows that recurring revenue is absolutely what you want. So everyone wants you to be everyone wants you to join their club. And as a result, we've developed kind of thick skin, and we get really wary of the movie membership pitch and the grocery store membership pitch and the rock climbing membership pitch. And yes, even the float center membership pitch is just one. It's probably like the 5th membership pitch they've received that day. Right. So when someone's just auto-enrolled in the program and you're just saying, hey, well, you don't need to buy anything, but if you come back regularly, you get rewarded. There is something nice about that I like, even though we haven't played with it that much outside of our kind of first opening float chain type thing that I mentioned before. So more secondhand, I guess, for other systems that different float centers out there are using.
And the tricky thing about all of this, and we've mentioned this before, and it's good to remember in conversations like this, is if you offer too many things, all of a sudden your pricing becomes really complicated, and it's really easy for complexity to be added. Like if you have maybe 2 different lengths of float, maybe some massage, and you have like all these different fancy membership and packages and different incentives. Like at a certain point, you have 30 different options for someone to choose from for essentially the same service. And that can just lead to choice paralysis in people. So whenever you're thinking about things in addition to memberships, or that's why we don't even put packages as a thing that we list publicly. It's just because we want to make sure our pricing menu is kind of as simple as possible and doesn't seem overwhelming to people.
So the more rules that you start adding onto things, and this is also, I guess, another one that we didn't talk about is this idea of kind of float challenges, or hey, like float a set number of times during a specific period and earn certain rewards and point systems. I've seen kind of point systems based reward mechanisms. We even drew out this whole like crazy point scheme before we ever opened Float On for what we could reward people for, and even like reading books and doing reports and stuff like that might save people off of their floats because they're more educated now. And again, it's not like you're just one part of a very complicated life that many people are living. So the idea to ask people
philosophy lesson for the day.
The idea to ask people to just invest that much of their brain power into understanding your entire system and keeping up with it and then playing the game, it seems like too much. It seems like too much to ask of the cognitive interest of most of your floaters.
And we just know that stuff like that's overwhelming to people and leads to them not choosing things because it's just intense to have to make big decisions like that.
Yeah, it's human. I mean, so much so that like when we were deciding what our point scales would be, we're like, let's just not have any of them.
Yeah, so there's
an answer in there somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. Good luck finding it. And if you have other questions that you would like as thoroughly answered as this one, you can go to floatanksolutions.com/podcast.
And be sure to mention answer thoroughly right there in the questions that we know.
So we know. All right, that's it for us. We got down to business.
Yep, and now let's let you get back to business.
Yeah, that's gonna be our outro from now on.
Oh God.